with yours truly, Matt Floyd, hosted by also Jerry Brazy and Steve Floyd. I will say we just got back from being down in Destin all week. And I got to start by saying, Jerry, the amount of miles that we accomplished, I haven't done that many miles in a long time, just walking or running. But if you want to elaborate to the audience, anyone that saw us down there or saw any posts go up while we're down there, we put in a crap ton of miles. And I'll let Jerry kind of take that away.
Yeah, it started with me because from how fast I could run a mile, right? That a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, I was talking about doing one in 10 minutes and I thought it would take me all this time. And then 3 days later, I went to the gym and said, quit being a puss, get your ass in there and just run a 10-minute mile. With me, with all of my heart health, back issues, being able to even think about that was something else. And since then, I've done a 9.5-minute mile. And so it all started kind of there. So then when we got there, we drove all day. We went for a walk that night, which took us over into midnight, and then got up the next morning and I went and did 5 miles. And then I think in the midday, I went and did 5 miles. And then at night, we went out every night and did 5 miles. And instead of 4 miles, I've been doing 5 miles through my cut. And so pretty soon we're looking at the phone and we're like, holy God, dudes, I did like 13, 14 miles today. And then the next day became, what was it, 17 miles, I
17.
think. 17 miles. And I think I did 54 miles myself for the week. And it was going to be 60 some, but I got hosed because the weather turned to ass on Friday, as we know. So we didn't get to go out and do the miles because it just started to pour down rain. But yeah, net of it, it just kind of like, I don't know about you guys, but it became, you go walk in the morning and then you go walk at night and then there'd be a walk in the middle of the day or there'd be a lull or nothing to do. And I was like, why can't I go do another? And I'm doing 2 minute on, 2 minute off. With you guys, we were walking at night, but my morning and my midday was 6 miles. And it just became 6 miles. Some of them last 2 days, I was doing 6 miles and just doing 2 minute on, 2 minute off. And then I'd come home for a few hours and hang out, go to the beach, whatever. And then right back and just, I'm going to go do another 6 miles. And I don't know, it went beyond anything. I don't know. I wouldn't say that anything beyond anything I didn't think I could do. It just kind of reminded me of the limitations that I set for myself. I think we all do this, but certainly what I was setting for myself unconsciously, I wasn't necessarily subconsciously, I suppose is a word to use. It was all just subconscious. And I was just like, yeah, you can't do 15 miles a day. Turns out, yes, I can quite easily, actually, and probably could have done 20 or 25. So, I don't want to make it sound like we were doing 15 miles at one time, but I do 6 miles in the morning, 6 miles at night, and 6 miles, 5 miles with you guys in the evening. That's, pretty soon it's 15, 16, 18 miles a day.
Yeah, I want to say, Jerry, from that progression of when we got down there the first day to the final day, right before the weather turned to complete trash, what was that progression in your own head of feeling, both mentally and physically, of like that day-to-day progression and being able to say, hey, I'm going to go get another 5 miles in, or hey, I'm going to start with 4 and then I went to 5? Like, what was that progression like?
I'll tell you, it just dawned on me that I could just go do more. The thing I was battling was not to do too many. I'd have just gone all day. I'd have left in the morning and came back at night. And I was this close to doing that a couple of times to just go. But I'm there with you guys and there with the wife and my daughter. And, we got to go to eat and all the things that we do there. So it wasn't practical, but it was, and I put everything I do into my AI. I have a project for all of my health is through this AI. And the AI kept warning me, dude, you got to relax. You got to slow down. You're 57 years old. You're worried about, there might be some joint issues. There might be some this issues. There might be some of this issues. So I had to work to control myself because once I get going, once I realized what I could do, once I realized I could run a 2 minute on, 2 minute off, seemingly forever. I mean, I was doing 6 miles and come back, sit down for a second, get a protein shake and a banana. And I was like, I'm going to go do another 6 miles. So I don't know if that's necessarily a progression, Matt. It was more, it was so over the top for me that I had to tell myself, stop it, slow down. No, don't go do 8 miles. You're fine. 6 is enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's where I was trying to figure out for myself when we first got down there. I was doing those miles with you guys, but in my head, it's always been about running my miles because I can. And so when I ran those 5 miles that first day and then we walked that night, the next day, after we had a discussion about what is actually the health benefits of walking compared to running, I then went to that 3 minutes or 4 minutes of running and then 4 minutes of walking. And I remember that feeling after I got back with those 5 miles that I felt so much better doing the mixed like Tabata timer style than I did just flat out running the whole time.
Yeah.
Like
It's
you could just
something.
keep going.
Yeah. And the thing is in all honesty, what else are you going to do? I mean, it was, to me, it wasn't work. As a matter of fact, it was really relaxing, even though you were putting in a good pace to get out, talk, which is what we did. Basically had walking meetings every time. And then possibly, the last day before the weather got us out on Friday, had a really good walk with just where, direction this could all go in with what Matt put in the Claude. But it gave us that hour, 15, hour and 20 minutes just to talk about it. No distractions or anything like that. What are you going to do? Sit and, be there on your phone for the evening, watch something on TV, why not get out and go for a walk, and how much more beneficial. I missed it the last day, to be honest with you. I mean, I really missed not being able to go out, but the weather was not going to cooperate with the temperature dropping some and the rain. Maybe even, it was just pissing rain because it did it that one time on us. And as much as I like to walk, that doesn't get fun when you're doing that.
Yeah, I think too that to your point, Steve, the pushback's going to be, what are you, crazy? You're on vacation, right? I like to relax on vacation. And I was like, most of the people who say that aren't in the kind of shape that we're in. That's my take on that. Most of the people who say that aren't in my kind of shape. Most of the people who say that don't have my discipline. They don't have my sacrifice. They're not eating the food that I eat as religiously as I do. They don't go and work out the way that I do. They don't challenge themselves the way that I do. And so my pushback to them is, yeah, we sat on the beach. We did those things. It was fantastic. We had fun. But also, there's a lot of time where you might be sitting around reading a book. I'm not going to, okay, fine, read a book. I'm going to go do 6 miles. So we all get to do what we want to do, which is fine. And I'm not trashing reading books. I'm the biggest reader on the planet. My point being, if you're going to stick around and do those sorts of things and comment, I'm there to relax, I'm doing what relaxes me. And what relaxes me is that my body at 229, 228 pounds is in such a position at 57 years old, overcoming these massive hurdles that I've overcome, to go out and crush miles every day. It was refreshing. How can it be any better? I'm in the sun, except for that crappy Friday. I'm in the sun. I'm getting sunburnt, right? I'm out in the ocean air. I'm seeing people. I'm active. I'm moving. I don't know what else there is to do. We go eat. I got to offset all of the food that I was eating that I was thoroughly enjoying because we were going out and doing the miles. So I think that it's not for everybody, but the reality is I think people should appreciate what someone does when they go out and do 15 or 18 miles a day on their vacation and realize that is a release, that is a relaxing event, to be able to do that mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, being in this kind of shape, that's what you want to go do on your vacation and then come home feeling refreshed, is a freaking superpower. And it's just excuse making to anybody else that's going to say, well, I like to chill out and drink margaritas. I like chilling out and drinking margaritas as much as the next guy. But what are you going to do for that other 20 hours of the day?
Exactly. And to your point, because I love the nighttime ones, getting out there walking, even though you couldn't see the water. Well, sometimes it was light enough, but you could hear it, then you could smell it. So, I mean, if you are going to go walk and put it in, what a fantastic place, where we stay down there, where you're along the water virtually the whole way,
Yeah.
just being able to do that and get out in that. And it is relaxing. And especially getting back and, chocolate protein shake and a banana on the back patio
Oh,
deck area there. It's
oh,
so
it's the
nice
best.
getting out there,
It's the
and I
best.
enjoyed that. We sit out there and talk another 45 minutes to an hour, kind of winding down, cooling off. And the whole thing that was relaxing compared, and everybody has their stuff, but it compared to, other things people do, other things I used to do before I was where I was at.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
truly missed not going out Friday night and going for that walk. I was like, it's the last night here. Be nice to get those in. And not because I felt a sense of obligation to anything. It's just what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, good habits. Yeah, I think it's strong. I think it's valuable, and I didn't look at it as a sacrifice. I look at it as I came back from vacation. Other than the Friday got effed, and so that kind of sucked for everybody. But once you're past that, it was like that was a good vacation. Went too quick. That's how you know it was a good vacation because it was over before it started.
Yeah, I was cleaning all the chairs off, putting them up, thinking it's going to be a little while before I get these back out. Kind
Yeah,
of a little bit of a lot to do between now and then. Be a lot different people by then too. That's the thing I look at next time I pull these out.
in
Where's life going
October.
to be? Keep
Yeah, and
moving.
I'll tell you what too is most. I'm just going to go back to this because having to listen to this, most people are soft, and I'm not soft. Y'all aren't soft, right? The world is full of soft, and so if your idea of me going on my vacation, us going on our vacation, doing the kind of hours, doing kind of the miles that we did, and putting in the exercise that we did, that's somehow crazy. I think the problem is with you, not with us because the world is soft. So whether I'm on vacation, whether or not I'm at work, whether or not I'm home, whatever it is, I'm playing pool, I'm not soft. It's always on, always intense, always pushing. I'm not an a-hole about it. You two spend inordinate amounts of time with me. I'm not an a-hole about it. But at the same time, we got to get this thing on. And you don't have to go do it with me. It's not like I'm going, hey, don't be a pussy, Matt. Let's go. I would never do that. Y'all go do what your thing is, and I'll do what my thing is. Just turned out being out in the sun's a good thing for everybody. And so, yeah, I think that there's enough softness in the world. I don't want any part of it. Maybe I did an extra to answer your question, Matt. Maybe I did a extra miles every day because the freaking world has turned so soft and I don't recognize it. And so I was like, okay, now I got to go do 20 miles a day just to prove that I'm not part of all of those people.
I was going to say to distance yourself from that whole thinking.
Yeah.
Now you said you're not an a-hole about it, but when you're in that community of people that are all leveled up, yeah, there's a little bit in there like, Matt, you scuffed your foot. Do you need us to carry you? Are you going to be able to finish this? No, dude, the ground shifted. I stepped in a hole and the other foot was high.
You know what I mean.
There was that rock that I stepped on.
But
It
see, the
rolled on
thing
my
is,
ankle almost.
when
Dude,
you're
I
at that
totally almost
level
hurt myself.
and you're surrounded by that, though, it elevates you in a good
Yeah.
way. It's a
Yeah.
competitiveness that exists
Right.
in everything we do.
Right.
I challenge people that don't get out and walk, but they like to cut their lawn and keep it maintained. There's some competitives for that old boy sitting on his riding lawnmower to have the best looking yard. People have to realize that is in us, and we do thrive on that. The people that don't are the ones that just really give up and push back. And that's why they say, well, I'm not competitive. Well, it's because, really they can't push themselves to do it. There's everybody has something they can be competitive in. Even the guy on the riding lawnmower, he wants the best looking yard. You go around any neighborhood, our neighborhood, you can tell the people that really put into work for their yard. We choose to do it for our health because that grass is going to die in the winter. Somebody else will buy that house and own it. But this is the only body we get. This is the only life we get to live.
Yeah.
So we choose to live it at a higher level when you get around that. And that's something that we want to definitely create for those that come into this community, help you level up wherever you're starting out at. Great, just start. And then start getting up there and feel that fire. Maybe it's gone dormant in some people. Maybe they've just gotten into the routine, been doing this for years, and you need something to kind of break it out, to shake it up. And a community like this is one thing you can do that in to where it gets you fired up, gets that kind of little fire in your belly going again, that maybe it's just the world's kind of sucked out of you because it'll suck it out of you in a heartbeat because you're surrounded, to your point, Jerry, by so much complacency.
Yeah.
And so it's nice when you get around, and there's people that get in groups just for that reason out there. So I'd encourage people, if you want to get into something like this, be around this, definitely, join us in at least in the school community or even a cohort if you're a business owner, because this is where you'll get those fires driven. You have Jerry's passion for business, still in the business, still boots on the ground, still struggling, still having setbacks that he has to overcome every week, to be able to do this. But, just being around you guys, I can't let my game slip. And it's kind of subconscious. Now, I don't feel pressure. That's what I want. Now,
Right.
is it harder to push yourself at that? Yeah, because it's real easy to just go sit on the sofa and do nothing because you think you put in a good hard day's work. But, and I'm not saying you don't, as much as like, what are you doing for yourself?
Well, one person's idea of a hard day's work is another person's mild afternoon.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't want to hear. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear that their day is hard and that they earned sitting on a chair for 2 hours at night watching a basketball game, drinking a beer is earned. Therefore, the success that somebody else has who does not have those impediments to success, that impediment being that mindset that says that I earned this thing, therefore I get to go get this thing. I get to go do this thing. That's great. 9 to 5, there's nothing wrong with it. But again, don't fool yourselves about what reality is, because like I always say, there are animals out here like me that are pushing for everything and just never stop pushing. And that's your competition. But if you're happy where you are and you don't want more, and you don't want to try to level up and achieve and move on and get away from where you are, well, then you need to be happy with it, not complain about it, live quietly in it, and just go about your life. The problem is too many people are talking about what they want, what they're going to do. One day I'm going to, and there they sit drinking their beer, watching a basketball game for 2.5 hours at night, wondering why the guy across the street who's never home has so much more things than he does and is doing so much better in their job or at home life or whatever it might be, whatever aspiration someone has to success. They should go find people who are really good at it and see how they do it. But the problem with doing that is you're going to see that the way that you go about your world ain't the way to go about getting that thing that someone else has that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to say, Jerry, the thought of when we were in Destin last week and the amount of time that we actually spent together, for younger guys out there like me, or even just a little bit older than me, there is a hunger for surrounding yourself with people that are trying to continue to push the envelope. And too many times they'll look to social media and they'll try to find someone that they kind of aspire to, the Alex Hermosis of the world, where it's like, man, they've got this, they've got a massive business, they're social media famous and all this stuff, but they don't understand that they really can't connect with Alex. They can aspire to be like someone like Alex, but the difference with you is that you are the same in person as you are on social media, as you are throughout every aspect of your life. And young guys can now be able to connect with you and engage and ask questions, compared to someone like Alex, where unless you jump on a live YouTube video that he's doing and he happens, like one of his assistants happened to pick a question that you throw out there, it's a lottery and it's not guaranteed. Whereas with the Kronos Forge on school, they can ask questions and DM you directly. And for me, having that is a superpower for someone who's trying to figure out what to do within entrepreneurship or what to do within business. And the more I'm around you, the more I choose to continue to push myself, because it's not going to be a matter of, oh, I'm just going to always look up to Jerry, but I'm going to be sitting on the couch watching Netflix at night. And to your point about us working together, when you're trying to make something better, if it's for yourself or with someone else, and they're continuing to push, well, either you curl up into a ball in the fetal position and you cry about it because you're like, I just don't have enough time in the day, or I don't know how they're putting all this work in, or you work just as hard as they do. And you'll be impressed to see how far you can go when in reality, you probably didn't even know that was in you, but it was there. And to Steve's point, it was dormant. It was just kind of sitting by the wayside. And being around people like you, being around people like Steve, it's a constant effort to better ourselves. And for me, it's a get at least 1% better every day. That could be across a relationship, that could be across a career, that could be across just my health. It could be any of those things. And I think that's the power of having that intentional community compared to aspiring to someone who has millions of followers, knowing that you're really not ever going to connect to them. You're going to aspire to be them, but you're not going to understand how to even get from where you're at to that level, because people are like, oh, I can just jump to that level. No, no, no. It took years and experiences. And so being able to join the school community, you'll be able to ask those questions in real time. And the questions that you might feel like that are dumb. I don't know how many times, Jerry, I had a question with you where I'm like, well, isn't it this way? And you're like, no, it's definitely this. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. And just had to ask the question. But the ability to have that question to someone like you who's done $450 million in revenue, I'm not going to have that same level of communication to someone that's at your level across just general social media. It's not going to be answered. And I'm not going to feel comfortable asking a question when they're up here and I'm down here, when in reality, you have enough, like, I would say, humbleness to be able to say, no, here's what you need to do. If you're at zero or at $1,000, this is what you should start doing. And these are the steps that at least I took, and you can learn from these. And I think that's the power of a good community compared to a following on social media.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, you're going to spend your time around somebody, and they're going to influence you, whether you want to say they do or not, whether it's family, friends, a community like this. You get one shot at this thing, we call life. Why not live it the best? Why not live it to the highest level that you're capable of? That's something that's really dawned on me is you're going to look back, and how many people look back and wish they had done something, wish they had taken a chance, wish they had taken a shot at something. So it's real. I've seen, stories and stuff of people that were on deathbeds, people working hospice care and deal with these people when they're at the end. And there's always things they wish they would have done, and for most people right now, today is the future. This is the day you can start, having that. And you're going to spend your time around some people. We've made decisions, Jerry, just because of where we want to be and the community of people we want to be around, because they're either going to pick you up or lower you down. A lot of people think, well, these are kind of neutral. No, I guarantee if they're neutral, they're pulling you down. There's no neutral. There's no coasting. I mean, there's a neutral in your car, but when do you really use it? You're either parked and not going anywhere, which means you're getting further behind, or you're in drive getting somewhere. And a lot of people have that idea that, time stands still. Time is always moving. We know that. We all get older and we get there before we realize it. It always kind of catches us off guard where we're at. But, the thing is you're either moving toward a goal you want or away from a goal. There's no static ground. A lot of people live as if, well, I'm just kind of maintaining right now. But when you look at it, you get to the end and, you just realize that you were either moving away the whole time or moving towards it. So why not, if you got the choice, which everybody has that choice, why not go ahead and move towards something more? Why not go ahead and scratch that itch, satisfy that urge to have more, not necessarily even material things, just have a richer, fuller life of experiences, like what we just did last week. It's a great experience, and just build those things in your life. And but you have to get around a community, because to Jerry's point, the world is going to pull you back, because as a whole, people are soft. And a lot of times, to your point, when you were saying that, you do the extra mile because you want to distance yourself from that, because we know it's our natural inclination to, get comfortable and relax. You have to work at being this. You have to, but then it becomes a mindset where it's not so much work. It just becomes who you are. And a lot of people don't realize that what they're capable of. And all of us as humans are capable of so much more, whether it's in our health, in our business, in our relationships. There's so much more we're capable of. But man, complacency is such a drug, to the human, to just chill. And there's moments for it. But to me, chilling was going for a 6-mile walk in the evening. That was chilling, put a little effort in on it, but that was relaxing. So, I encourage people, if there's something you've thought about doing, something you're thinking about doing, remember, time doesn't stand still. You're even moving toward, or you're moving away from whatever it is you've had. Maybe you've never told somebody, man, I'd really like to do this, because you can get in conversations with people and they always have this thing they'd like to have done. They'd like to try, even right now, so There's nothing stopping you. And all said, we live in the greatest nation on earth to do literally almost anything you want to do. You just have to talk to people around the world that come here because they know that there's just opportunity. And there's a little phrase we have, opportunities everywhere, but you got to go get them. But they're there for the taking. And the people, the spoils go to the victor. The people that are going out there, putting in the work, putting in the effort in themselves to change who they are today, to become who they want to be tomorrow. It's a day by day process. It takes time. But the thing is where you're at right now is the decisions of everything you've made up to now. And if you've just lived a life of comfort and, you've had it and you're just not satisfied, well, that's decisions you've made. Just like it, you could just start today, make a different decision to have a different outcome.
Yeah, I think that, excuse me, I have said forever that I've told this story that when I was 28 years old, I had my son at home. I got approached about starting a business. I got sent a pro forma. I had no idea what it was. I did not know what a P&L was. I didn't know what a balance sheet was. I had no context for what any of these things were, but I had an epiphany that said I needed to shut up and listen, and otherwise I was going to be doing the jobs that the guys who were working for me that were in their 50s at the time were doing. And one of those prerequisites for doing that was that I left all of my friends behind, the people that I had grown up with, the people I hung out with at the bar. Because as I've said, we would talk sports, play sports, watch sports, argue about talking sports while watching and eating, and playing sports while eating, while playing and watching sports. I mean, it was sports all of the time. And in that arena, last night I went to dinner with my wife and daughter, and behind us were three men. I'm going to say they were in their 40s. And the entire conversation, for the entire time they were behind us, we were at a restaurant that had, TVs everywhere. The entire conversation for the entire time that they were behind us, and this probably went on for an hour, was sports. It started with Alabama. It moved through baseball. It was just sports. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Except for me, the night before, I had gone to a business dinner, and there were large company owners sitting around a round table at a restaurant in Nashville. And through a 3-hour conversation, which is now turned into a group text, we're all going to get together here in the next couple of weeks outside of the group that we were paying that put us all together, because the conversation was so good and we got along so well. And we're going to get together outside of that and do it on our own. And not one time in that 3-hour conversation that really inspired me and pushed me, and it entertained me. It was mentally challenging. I loved every part about it. I said to my wife last night, sitting at that table, listening to the conversation behind me, not one time did sports come up. So how many people can sit and have conversations for an hour? How many men, it was all men, can sit for an hour, have a conversation, or sit for 3 hours, have conversations with 6, 7 other guys, and not have sports come up and feel like you learned something, feel like you've come away a better person. The problem with sports is that it makes us all feel smart, because you can't really argue if Barry Bonds is better than Ty Cobb, right? That's something that's subjective. And so you can defend yourself and you can feel smart in that defense. The reality is, though, if I had to sit here and we had to argue about the virtues of economics and the impact that the government plays on what it takes to get a license to conduct business in the South versus up in the Northwest, how is anybody else going to fare? You say, well, what's that got to do with anything, Jerry? Well, it's information. If you're not an entrepreneur, it's information. You're learning things you don't know, and everything that you learn adds to that knowledge, that database that you need. The bigger the database, the more information you have to go access. And so for me, I realized that at 28, I needed to get rid of all of those people, to your point, Steve, which I did. And I went and found people that were smarter than I was. And that was very difficult. I've started with an architect that I had in a basketball team, and just start asking the dumbest questions imaginable, and then accountants and attorneys and so on. And it's hard to be the dumbest person in the group. And I'll say this egotistically, I think I was the smartest person in the group, but I had the least amount of information. I was the least educated on the things that they were teaching me about, right? I certainly had more street smarts. I certainly had more common sense. I certainly have gone on to do things far above anything any of those people could ever imagine, but they were still smarter than I was in the thing that they knew about and how to think and how to look at the world outside of my street kid sports male dominated mentality. And getting rid of them, I just did it like that too. I had an epiphany and I got rid of them. So that to me, the conversation I had 2 nights ago versus the conversation that I listened to those guys have behind me last night. I don't mind talking sports, but I think if that's the only thing you're talking about, then I feel sorry for that life lived that way, because the world is so much bigger and there's so many other things to talk about. And as these 2 guys will tell you, I'm a sports nut and I'm the most competitive human being on the planet.
Yeah. I was going to say, Jerry, this is for sports, saying it's the great equalizer. And the amount of guys that I know that talk about sports, the reason that they talk about sports so much is because they don't have any responsibility of the outcome of that sport. It's all based off of knowledge about the person that's actually doing the thing that they can't do, rather than being a business owner or going out there and trying and failing. They don't want to talk about their failures. That's not what guys want to talk about. But the amount of growth personally, when you talk about that failure and then have that conversation with someone who's also trying to grow, that conversation is powerful. And that's all a sense of you are doing something. You are doing an action, whether it was a good outcome or a bad outcome, you did that action. So you have the responsibility, compared to a sport where they look at someone on a screen and they said, oh, they should have moved that way instead of that way. Well, you're not the one out on the court dribbling the basketball. But in your head, you could see everything because you're thinking you're like ESPN with the camera, but you're not actually knowing what they're saying, how they're feeling, how their body feels, how like their brain works in split seconds. You're just seeing it play out on a TV, and you're just saying, hey, I know this person catches 80% of the ball out of a normal football game, but he dropped that pass, so he shouldn't have dropped that. Okay, how is that adding to any value at the table that you're sitting at? And I think that was what it did for me when it talked about sports, and that I had to just remove myself from just those tables, those conversations, those type of people. And I'll have other guys reach out and say, man, do you really don't hang out with us anymore? Like, what was it or something? And it's never them. It's just me changing because I'm actually physically trying stuff and doing stuff compared to watching someone else do it on a TV and vicariously living through them, because I'm not afraid to go out there and most of the time mess it up.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You want to talk about the NBA, Matt? What about the NBA?
I was going to talk more just about the finals right now and how crazy it's come down to. I think earlier I was looking at some like different stats.
Speaking of sports.
Yeah. But it was around sports for at least the NBA finals, because we all love watching basketball. We all played basketball, and Jerry and I both refereed basketball for a while. And OKC is the #1 seed again. But then the Knicks and the Sixers are going at it at MSG right now, which is one of the best buildings in sports. So before we go any further, I need to know, Jerry, who are you riding to the finals, and who do you think that actually could win it?
Well, it's obviously the playoffs now, and that is a great question. I have been was the world's biggest NBA fan, and now I can hardly tell you anybody that's playing for the most part, because the politics of it have just ruined it for me. And I'll go off on a bit of a diatribe here, which will be surprising to you guys. I know you're not used to this. And this goes to everybody about sports. These athletes don't know you exist. Yeah. They don't know that what your life is like. and you praise them and you worship them and you heap adulation on them and you talk about them in reverential terms, all the while knocking them down and making yourselves feel better. Those guys don't know who you are. It's a game. It's a marketing game, and we are all suckers, and we are worse off for it. I think that as I've gotten older, I don't know had sports gotten so political, I don't know that I would have arrived here where I am, but maybe it would have. And that is that I see it for the suckers game that it is. I see it for the deadening, the dumbing down of America. Look at the fancy football throw while we're robbing you blind every day at every level, while we tax the very seat that you're sitting in, the seat that you work so hard to take you and your son to, on a stadium that you built with your tax dollars that benefited a billionaire 100 times over, while making tens and hundreds of millions of dollars for the players and the coaches. Meanwhile, you're working away on your job, paying hundreds of dollars to take to somebody to a game, your kid, your wife, right? It's 5, 6, 7, 800,000 bucks to do that now in a stadium you built, in a parking lot that you built, that you just paid for, to worship somebody who does not know that you exist. I think it's a trap. I think that it is meant to keep us calm. It's meant to keep us arguing. It's meant, nobody loves a sports argument more than sports nuts, and that I would include myself in that. So before I answer your question, Matt, I think that sports is an impediment to success. I think playing sports is massively important. So let's be clear. I think playing sports, there's nothing more important you can do than playing sports as a kid, and everybody should do that. But I think it's a dumbing down of America. And I'm following baseball big time this year. After being a Dodger fan for 1,000 years, I've been to hundreds of games. And I have picked a new team, the Atlanta Braves, and it just so happens that I look like a bandwagon jumper, but I do live in Tennessee. Atlanta's 4 hours away. Steve has the hat on. All of those things were good enough for me. And so my team is now having the best record in baseball and is off to the hottest start they've ever had. And that's saying something for a team with that legacy. But having said that, I do it with clear eyes, and I have no worship whatsoever. And I don't feel the need to defend anybody about anything at any time. And I'm repulsed, to your point, Matt, when I'm sitting with a group of people like the men, grown men, 40-something-year-old men that spend an hour plus behind me having these conversations. There's the same ones who are going to go and whine and cry about their world and about what's going on in their world. And to your point, Matt, there's no value in it. I learned that at 28 years old, and I turned it into a massive fortune. So having said that, soapbox removed. Who am I going to watch in the NBA? I tried to watch a Denver game this year because I think that what's his name, their center, is just about the most talented basketball player I've ever seen at his size and his height. Help me out, guys. What's his name? The center. Yeah, Jokic. That guy's just absolutely something else. I love the kid in Dallas. He's phenomenal. They didn't make the playoffs, unfortunately, but I'll probably watch more NBA because because of him and other players like him. So I find that to be exciting. Having said that, Matt, I don't know that I can answer your question because, quite frankly, I just haven't followed it closely enough. So I'll tell you this. I know that it's going to be OKC right now because LeBron James can't have enough of his teeth knocked down his throat and out of his mouth playing OKC. I want it 4-0. I want 20-point blowouts. And I want to see that man humbled so badly that he has to leave the league because I think while he's one of the best basketball players to ever play, he is a scourge to the NBA. He has ruined it for generations of people, both in the way that game is played and what a soft flopper the guy is that he has taught years or generations of kids that that's what men do. The NBA is so soft. You ever notice how many times a player falls over and you would think there must be an assassin in the stands? This has got to be a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and some dude with a sniper rifle is in the rafters when these guys go down. It's like that dude clearly got shot with a 308 and he's done. He's like a deer. He's never getting up again. And then he dunks the ball half a second later. Y'all ever notice this? It's unwatchable. There's no pride. There's no men. They're all girls. You got dudes now in the NBA with that do videos of painting their fingernails. Have you seen this guy? I mean, what are we watching, guys? That's they can have it. I might as well be watching the WNBA. And at the rate the NBA is going, it's going to be the WNBA. Sorry, 10-minute answer to a very simple question. OKC, Matt, just because I want them to crush the Lakers.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, Jerry, the reason I brought that up is because I know we were just talking about sports and how much of little to no value it is. It's more for me just to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of like culture. But to your point, I don't know half of the guys on any of these teams, but I just stay enough aware so that if someone were to ask a conversation and be like, hey, so what's the playoffs look like? And it's a guy that's like just starting a conversation with me, I can at least start that conversation that way. But if the conversation continues to be about sports, to your point, the guy's sitting behind you for the next hour, well, then that's my cue to leave. Yeah, but it's a great entryway into a conversation because that's where guys kind of easily bond, is being able to talk about sports. And so you have that initial part of the conversation, but the evolution of that conversation is how I look at how other guys talk and see if they're at the level that I'm looking for out of getting growth and understanding and knowledge from, compared to just shooting the shit with. And I know that's only the highest level of value I'm going to get from that conversation.
Here's, I just thought of this. And then I'll shut up. Perfect example or description. I think when it comes to sports, that like Neo in the Matrix, I took the pill. And so I was asleep in one of them pods because it was important to me that I knew every player on every team and exactly what they did in all of the sports. And it was so much a part of my life. And even after I said I got to give up sports watching, playing, and all of those things, I still was a 25-year season ticket holder, courtside on the Blazers and on the Portland Trail Blazers. And I traveled all over the country watching sports all the time. I'm still a huge sports fan. But just here in the last 5 or 6 years, I think I've taken that pill that woke me up and showed me that I was snookered. Right. I was lied to, and the world that I was living in was nothing more than a tube. And I was nothing more than electricity to, fire up the massive subsidies to pay billionaires and millionaires so that they could entertain us and get rich on our backs.
Yeah, I think it is. And there's obviously a play on Karl Marx's thing where it's the modern day opiate of the masses. To your point earlier, Jerry, it keeps people kind of subdued. It keeps them distracted. And I think that's a big thing. It keeps them distracted from what they could really be doing. And it's lost its value. It has a value as an entertainment, like a little break from what you're doing. Go watch people. The reason I like sports is because I like the idea that they're competing. It's not just that, they're competing. I can watch a lot of games that I have no interest in, but I will pick a side because we always do. We want to, okay, they're going to do the right things to win this game. And the fact that they prepare and to try to win, I identify with that, that aspect of it for the entertainment value it is. But the problem is it becomes people's identity. Their team does good, they're happy. Their team doesn't do good, they're bummed out and depressed, especially down here in the South with college football. And since it's a week till they play again, they're bummed out for a week. And truth of the matter is I've been there years ago, and so I can look back and recognize how that was doing it. It did zero to advance my life or what I could have achieved. it truly was an opiate, for me, just to kind of take away from what I was doing that I didn't like, that I didn't, enjoy. It was that distraction. And I think that's a lot of what it does for people nowadays. And it really is, social media is the same way. It's a distraction when you could, to Matt's point, when you keep up with it so you can just know what's going on, kind of have an idea what's going on in the world, but then it becomes your whole identity. And I think that's where it crosses over to where, it's detrimental, and it really does reduce the value. I think back before we had all this, you know, there were, men that would become senators and public figures in their 30s. And now if we had somebody like, yeah, they're way too young, they don't have enough life experience yet for stuff. But it's because we play around so much. We spend too much time playing. And I don't mean
Mhm.
just like video games, but I mean we really are. We're so over entertained. And I believe it's, by design, to keep, to your point, Jerry, the kind of masses to do, keep them entertained. You can take this all the way back to Rome. And that was the whole idea of the Colosseum. How do you keep the public when we're increasing taxes and we're putting these burdens on them? Like, give them some entertainment and everybody gets happy. Everybody, feels, and the thing is it creates a point where, what you said earlier, they feel like they're part of it and they don't even know you exist besides the ticket that you pay for or your taxes in that area that pays for their buildings, they don't have to pay for, just because we want that identity. I say that as a huge sports fan, played a lot of sports in my life, and it's what created the competitive nature. It created that idea that you work together with people, to achieve a common goal. And I guess that's the biggest thing out of it to me that I enjoy about sports is it's a group of people coming together, especially men coming together, working together for a common goal of a victory. We want to come out on top. And so I think it has great value, to your point earlier, Jerry, of, when you're young, to have that instilled into you that creates that competitive drive. And I'm sure that had a lot that created your competitive drive in business for where you're at now. Not that you have used sports for that, but that competitive nature of building something and wanting to achieve and come out and win your Super Bowl of life for yourself, in
Mhm.
the way that you have. So that is the danger, is when it becomes your identity, the entertainment becomes who you are instead of just a stimulus in your life.
Yeah, I think that sports relative to my what happened to me in business and what happened to me, over the course of my life, sports played a part for sure, but I never played any organized sports for the most part. I played very little. I was a poor kid, so you didn't get. I saw other kids go and do it. It just wasn't something. I had 8 brothers and sisters. It wasn't something I ever got to go do. So if you were to say, well, Jerry, you played sports for a long time, once you got to be a teenager and got to be an adult and you were good at all of those things, I'd say yes, but my work ethic, uh, it- my work ethic, my common sense, and my street smarts are what put me where I am. So I don't what I had I not enjoyed sports. There's an argument to be made. I was always a sports nut, though. So even when I was a kid, I loved sports. I come from a big family, like I said, 8 brothers and sisters, and the other 8 could care less about sports. So it doesn't make any sense. Why did I care about sports? And so, in that context, I suppose there could be something to sports that helped me in my life climb out off of the streets and ultimately do what I did in business and what I did in life. But really, I think it's more about surviving what I did, not doing drugs, not smoking cigarettes, not drinking alcohol, not getting in trouble with the cops post 18 years old for the most part. All of those things, and that work ethic that I learned at 11 years old when I paid taxes for the first time in a job at a restaurant that I got. And I just put food and work together and said, well, this is the way to go. So I don't know how many, if I would ascribe lessons I learned to sports, I would ascribe less my competitive nature, my belief in myself, my willingness to risk everything, my belief that I'm going to come out on top. Were probably more critical to that than anything, and also my ability to shut up and listen post 28 years old when I had that epiphany. that really kind of set me apart. I always had an inquisitive mind. I was always interested in things that street kids aren't typically interested in. I read a ton and only stuff that I could learn from. So I wasn't reading anything, silly novels or anything that I thought was silly. I had to read about people and people who had found success and how they did it and how they survived in World War II and things of that nature. Also, where I grew up, right? I grew up in the Gen X generation. We were, latchkey kids. No one was watching us, so we got to do pretty much what we want. We became very, very independent doing that, and so I took that to the umpteenth degree. So I don't know how much sports played into it, but having said all of that, I think it's important. My kids all played sports. And hopefully this year, before the year's out, Steve, we can go down and watch an Atlanta game. So I totally would go to a game. I just have my eyes open about what sports really means, I think. And that comes from, I think it has value because it comes from somebody who has been there and done that and gone through it and climbed out of the gutter and made something of himself significant, and then is looking back on the world saying, what would I do differently? What I would have done differently is paid a lot less attention to sports.
Yeah, Jerry, I was thinking through this just now, and paralleling with this kind of same process of you being able to come out of the gutter, and as you've gotten older, that kind of awakening. And I was doing some research earlier this week, and a stat that I generally found very interesting was that the average founder of the fastest growing new businesses right now is 45 years old. And it's not 25, not like 23 from like a social media influencer talking about his e-com business. And the research was really so clear that it showed that the prior industry experience is one of the biggest predictors of entrepreneurial success. Mm. So for you, given at where you've been in your career, your network, everything you've built, do you think you're actually in the best position you've ever been to start something? Or does the idea of starting something feel a little bit less like serious for you than it did when you were younger, starting that now?
Certainly the pressure on me is different now. I mean, I had kids and I was, again, climbing out of nothing to try to make myself become something. And I think I've told the story, once I really started making money, when I was making the most money, $250,000 a month, I took my eye off the ball because life got too easy. And so I've got those lessons that I've learned to go back and fall on, to try to keep me, driven to some extent. I mean, I'm naturally driven anyway, but it looks easy to people from the outside. It's easy to talk about, but it's very, very difficult. So there's a lot of time, an inordinate amount of time spent doing very uncomfortable things all day long to try to get all of these things to happen. I happen to enjoy doing hard things. I mean, they suck and I don't want to do them, like, not unlike lifting weights. I'd rather go play pool, but in order for me to play pool long term, I need to be able to move around and I got to go lift weights. So I got to go do hard things. And so I try to look at hard things that way. So I guess the short answer to your question, or the long answer as I've turned it into, Matt, is I don't feel the same drive that I did when I was younger, because the things I'm driving for aren't, my kids are gone and grown and all of those things. But I love the journey. I love the game. So I'm still playing the game, probably as aggressive as I can. I don't feel like, people say this all the time, I don't feel like I'm 57 years old in the context of your question. Mm-hmm. Right? I have to remind myself every now and then that I might run out of time to grow this thing as big as I want it to go because I'm 57, right? And I have to remind myself of that, which is very different from, the other, I don't feel 57 is just because I physically don't. But that mental side is, of course, I'm going to go start a business. Why wouldn't I? Well, Jerry, you only got, however many hours. Well, I better hurry up then.
Yeah, because I was thinking the flip side of that is you being 57, the amount of experience, knowledge, and overall just growth that you've had since you've been 28 when you first started, and then had that kind of epiphany and all that, that whole almost years of compounding knowledge to now go out and say, at your age, I can start this business because now I know how to do it. And I know how to do it without having to run through every freaking wall from here till like the next 5 miles. Now you're like, oh, I'll walk on this part of the path, or, oh, I'll go through this side door. And you're like, when you were 28, you didn't even see the door. You just saw this way, and hard work and perseverance and learning from others, but you were still kind of hitting your head against the wall at different times. But it was because you were starting to figure out how everything continues to work, and how the bigger players that were within your experience, within your community, were how they were navigating certain things. And so now you're one of the older guys in the group, not the 28 and 30-year-old like I am. And that's where I see that risk of starting something new at your age being almost easier than it would be when it's at my age, because I don't know what I need to do or where I need to go. And I'm just trying to figure out a path, compared to you've already been down that path. And you can say, well, actually, I thought I was going to have to start at X, but actually I can start at Y, because I know these things that I learned along the way. And that's why you see people that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s start multiple businesses, and then they have 10 businesses. And you're like, how do you run 10 businesses? Well, because me being 30 years old, I can barely run one business, let alone my wife, let alone the rest of the existence around me. And I'm just trying to figure out these things. But then over time, you learn how to kind of like prioritize certain things. And based off those experiences, you now have kind of a cheat sheet, as you said you will, of knowing how to make stuff more efficient, more effective, and in a shorter amount of time than the time that you would have spent just trying to figure it out in the first place.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, I mean, if you can find the shortcut, why not? Steve and I will both tell you that had we had more people talking to us like we try to talk to people, we would have been successful way more, I think, than we were. And that's why we talk the way that we do.
Yeah. And a big part for me was when I came out to Portland. When you gave that opportunity, I remember where I was at when I took the phone call, and I was like, let's just give this thing a shot. But that was really what opened my eyes to what was possible. And I was in my 50s, maybe right around that, late 40s, right at 50. No, it was right before. It was late 40s. But no, it might have been in my 50s. Anyway, it was later. But that's when my eyes were opened up to what was possible, what you could really do. And since then, there's been no looking back. I attribute age at 60 to be nothing besides the fact that I have less time ahead of me to really get done what I'd like to do now that I know what's possible. So it's never too late to get an idea, to get in a group like this. I've been doing this for so many years, but I've always had this idea in the back of my mind: get around people, because being around you has helped me so much. And the continual resource that you are, that keeps my eyes open, to something. So even Matt, your age, yeah, it's a great resource and some direction to have and some guidance to have. But the thing is if you start at my age, yeah, there's a lot of business stuff I don't know that I'm learning, but you can take that life experience you have. One thing I do sales, and I started that later in life, but I had the experience of dealing with people. I just had to learn some of the skill sets that go along with it. Whereas somebody your age, Matt, you're still learning to deal with people, even though you've dealt with people. But I've been dealing with adults for 40 years. Whereas you've been dealing with them only 10, and it's exponential as that base grows of the people you have contact with. So I'd encourage anybody that's even older thought about, yeah, I'm a little too old for that. It's not, and I'm a perfect example of that. And when your eyes get open, that's why the whole idea, and this is a whole different subject, of retirement. I think a lot of people that do that is because they were doing something that they did, putting in their time. No such thing really as a pension much anymore, but just trying to build that and then get out of it. Whereas the way I am now, I don't want to retire. I couldn't imagine not doing something. It's just the freedom to possibly do what I'd like to do. And I'm not talking about like go play pool or fly fish or do something like that, even though those are great things, but to do things in my life. And you look at really successful, especially business owners, even if they sell, some of them will sell and quit doing whatever they're doing, but a lot of them sell and then get back into something else. They want a new challenge because it just becomes part of your DNA to build something because you can. And as you get older in life, you have a lot of skills. Even if you don't have the business skills, you have a lot of life skills that would translate in and give you, to your point, Matt, a little bit of a head start. And so this would be, I'd encourage people, just based on my own experience, get around this, get in this group, get in this community, to learn what that could be like, to learn how it could open your eyes to possibilities. Because honestly, I talk to people about they just retired or they're looking at retiring. And for me, I'm just getting started. I mean, the sky's the limit for what I want to be able to do and where I want to be able to go. And it's exciting to me, and especially when you spent so much of your life punching a clock, which there's nothing against that. I did it. But once your eyes are open to it, maybe a different version of, taking, what is it, the red pill, where your eyes are opened up, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, there's just so many possibilities, so many opportunities that are out there that you just kind of, you're invigorated. So I'd encourage anybody that's even later in life that wants to do something, do it, get around it, but you got to get around that community of people. And for most people, if you're just in a kind of a regular job, you don't have that community. I can about guarantee you that, because you would have already done it. You don't have that influence.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jerry and Steve, when you were talking about the age and it not being a factor of being able to actually go out and start in something new, you and I reference all the time, Steve, the movie The Interns with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, and they get in there. And I remember the scenes like from the movie because I've watched it so many times, but they walk in with all these young hotshot like bucks that are running around. They're the coders, developers. They know all the language and stuff. And these are two guys that have done sales essentially their whole life, and they just got let go. And so they're like, well, we might as well intern at this company called Google. It looks like it's doing pretty well. What are we going to do? Well, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And they show up, and the whole premise of that movie was not them learning how to do every single thing, because they knew they didn't have enough time, nor knowledge, nor expertise to learn how they're developing websites, how they're building APIs and Google Maps and all this stuff. No, they were just like, hey, so-and-so that owns that pizza shop down the street, yeah, I know him. His name's Joe. Yeah. He's a good guy. We should actually talk to him and say that, like, when customers leave a review, it boosts your online presence. And one of the developers is sitting there and he's like, wait, so you want me to go up to that counter and talk to that person and not just sit behind my iPad and code it all? And he goes, yeah. And then he ends up going up and just has a conversation. He talks about sports. He's able to like bring the guy in. Joe comes around the counter. He shows him by the computer because he just knows how to relate because he has that life experience. And I think that's like so powerful, because for me, I tend to overlook that. I look at like the knowledge and what you know and how to apply it. And that's all great. But there's an experience and a level of, I wouldn't say confidence, but just how you carry yourself, that even if you don't know, and like you said, Jerry, you're not the smartest guy in the room, you know how to carry yourself to where people look to you to make a decision, because they know that they can feel like they can relate and they can trust you regardless of what you know about what the final outcome is going to be. Like people that conquered countries in the past, they weren't going to say, hey, we're going to win. They were just putting all their eggs in one basket saying, hey, we're going to follow this guy and we'll see how it goes. There was no guaranteed success, but it's the same when it comes to like business. None of this stuff is guaranteed to work out. But with entrepreneurs, when you get around those types of similar mindsets and you're like, hey, we'll go for the freaking moon. If anything, we'll make it to space. We might not make it to the moon. We might even get 10 feet off the ground, but it's going to be one hell of a story. And that's the stuff that you can't replace. AI can never replace that. It's going to come up with everything else, but it's not going to have that human to human connection with where it's currently at. It's going to be years before it gets to even remotely close to be able to understand and feel the situations of being backed into a corner, not having anywhere to go, and you're fighting to survive. the robots, the AI is just going to say, oh, you should do this, or, oh, you have a probability of this compared to this. And it's like, no, it doesn't understand the human element of the hunger, the drive, and the community. And when you get into those tribes of people that you're able to excel with, and everyone's trying to make themselves better, man, it's tenacious. It's like being on that sports team and having Michael Jordan on the bench or playing, and you're on the bench. You're like, I don't care, because this is going to be a great game because Michael Jordan's on my team, and it's going to be a good game regardless. And so if you have the right people around you, even if they're not the smartest people, even if they're not the most talented, but they have that drive, well, then it just seeps into you, and you get that hunger, that drive. And now you're like, wow, I didn't know I can make it this far. Well, because if you were trying to do it on your own, you probably wouldn't have. And that's the whole point of the Kronos group. And that's where I'll just tee it up with Steve to let us go into the outro.
Yeah, well, that's a wrap on today's episode. Now, if you're listening to this and wondering how to actually bridge the gap between this insight and actually taking action, you need to be in the Forge. It's our school community ecosystem, and it's a community of achievers that are focused on optimizing business, health, and high performance living. Now, for the founders listening, you're doing a 1 million or more. Your biggest bottleneck isn't more hard work. It's actually the lack of outside perspective. And that's exactly why we built the Kronos peer advisory cohorts. We bring you into the trenches with other founders to pressure test your strategy so that you stop making those $100,000 mistakes in a vacuum. So check the links below to join the Forge or to book a discovery call for our next cohort. We'll see you on the inside. And remember, opportunities everywhere, but you got to go get them.
Boom.